Hi and welcome to today's Woodworking with them. So today we're looking at the ultimate bin store. You've got the bins, let's keep them tidy and, if you like, organised. So we're going to show you how you can make this bin store, and it's relatively easy. Hopefully you're enjoying the content of what we're going to show you. If you do, hit that subscribe button, share this and give us those thumbs up things. Time to get on with our bin store. So I've been out, had a look, had a measure, and we've all got these bins. It seems to be a massive mountain of right, so it'd be nice to keep them all together, keep them safe. We haven't been and done all that bit and had a look. Come back, start drawing stuff out, rough sketches on paper, sizes, plans of what we can try and do. So on the floor we've got a bit of board down here that represents the ground. I've got two upright rails. Now this is the end section and the dividers in between, so this is separating the bins. I've got 50mm off the floor, so I'm using a batten at the moment to give me that prep, to give me an idea how far off the floor so the legs can sit level, also stop the rot. Fixed rail will be in place when we get to it. I've cut a couple of bits of plywood to give me spacing in between and help keep things square. That really just helps me sort of gauge that width, check it's going to work. Got back leg, front leg in reality. On there I've got a height where I've measured the bins. So if I put something as a straight edge across, I'm using FESTOOL guide rail, just really, it's quite nice, it doesn't slip. That's giving me an angle for the slope on the roof. Then we want something like a sliding bevel. Alright, so we get our sliding bevel, we can bring that in, we can set that up. That means we can set things off the saw, we can draw these on, so our roof angle now quite easy to do. I can set that up. I can do the same on the far one, and we know that that's going down through. Alright, so we can cut those to lengths, we can cut those legs, get those rails made, and then we can start to assemble those frames. So we're going to set the angle of our sliding bevel onto our MITRE saw. That's the quickest and easiest. You could hand cut these if you like, you could possibly use your guide rail as well. So, got our sliding bevel, we're set up on here. Most important thing, cut the power. Make it safer. Let's bring this down. We can slide our bevel over, check our angle. So remember with these, you're not cutting one, so you can do a batch of. So that's why this is important. I said guard this with your life, because you want to make sure you're keeping your angle. So set it up, put it aside, keep it safe, try not to drop it on the floor. Our end, they will be square, so we've got to go back to maybe setting the saw back to square. You can set your length stops, so you can make it quick and repeatable. That's fantastic. Other thing to do, start to label it. So BL and which way the angle is tells me which way this is going together in the frame. Because once you start to get a collection of them, it's going to get a little bit confusing on which is what component. We'll cut our button. We've got our frame laid out on the bench. It's easier up here than on the floor. So I've got something as a stop. Gives me a ground level down here. Off the ground blocks, a couple of offcuts. So we can use those. I said to you about the 2 bits of ply that I got earlier, just to give me spacing in between. I've also drawn the middle line, so I've worked out for where a middle rail is going to go, so I've just marked that on. That'll help me. I can go on there. Then obviously I've cut everything, got it together. These have got to be screwed together now. And then once we've done those, we can put that middle rail in as well. I've made this simple little drilling block. This will sit on, gives me position to drill through, so everything looks equal. It also just makes it quicker than actually having to mark them all. Check them, I can lay it in place. This also acts just as a depth stop. So the drill isn't counter drilling into there, just going through our main 4-inch square. So on the plywood, which is giving me the spacing, we've got that middle rail. position. So if I draw that up there, that gives me the position there. We can do exactly the same at the other end. A couple of important bits for this. Obviously, this is going outside. So screws need to be suitable for something like decks or outdoor use. That's paramount. They're going to rust out quite quick. Likewise, you're going to use a glue. You want something that's got an exterior. So I'm going with a polyurethane, which will actually help seal the surface, stop the moisture getting in as much as anything else. It's not going to add a lot more strength to what we're gluing together, but it'll help actually stop the moisture rotting the timber out long term. There you go. And then so we've got to make a couple more of those, and then the division rails inside, which are very repetitive. So I'm going to get those done. We'll get you back in a second. We've got our frame together. We've got the four. Now they vary very slightly. At the moment, just literally clamping them together to give you an idea of what's going on. So our four frames to go in. The internal frames are slightly different, but jointed the same way. So we've got our end. These are going to be feather boarded. Middle rail adds a bit of strength. Internal rail, as we said, slightly different. So we've got the batten in here that's going to add the strength to put the shelf brackets or shelf slatting on. Major difference. If I line it up on the back here, this is 50mm narrower in width. So therefore, when this comes down, the next frame now is going to come down towards, in here. But that will bolt in and be level and screwed together there and screw onto our front rail. So next stage really is to make up the frame that's going to connect along the back here. This will be covered in, open and covered at this end. So I've got to work out the sizes where those bins have got to go. So we're going to have general rubbish, green garden and storage for a green box and stuff in the centre. Starting to take shape. This is going to be the back. This will be boarded. Middle section in here we're going to slat out in between. That will allow you to have your recycling box that slides in and out. Garden bin, household bin. These will have doors so we can open. On the front here this will have a lift up top so you can open and get into the bin. So this will all be feather boarded up. Next little bit I'm going to look at is making this now structurally stable, stop this from moving. So again we can have a couple of slats in between, we can have bits on either side. That will make it more rigid again. So we cut some of the bigger buttons down just to make it so these square sections. I've also cut down some for the slats that are going to go in between, and I can also cut them to length. So actually before I rip them, I cut them to length as a board, then rip them down. Or you could buy pre-machined that size, so they're 20mm thick. All I want to do with these is drill these before I get them there. This is going to be the tray to hold the slats, which you put your green box on. So we've got our rail, we've drilled it, we're going to put some glue on, so let's do that bit, and then we can position it. Don't need loads of glue. Come down along. The polyurethane glue, I know it'll expand a little bit, so I'm trying to be quite tight with it. Put that into here. Whoa, fits nice. Ideally, want it to be level on the bottom, so I can use offcut just to get this level there. Fits nice and tight. Now, when the slats come in, they're below the surface. That means this one's slightly higher. That'll stop the box being blown out either end. So that's quite deliberate that we're going to have that little lip here. That'll be good. So at this point we've got our rails in top and lower down. I've temporarily dropped the slats in place. Alright, how many will want? I think there's 12. There's 12 slats, so we have 13 gaps. So I have 210mm here, divided by 13 gives me a space of about 16mm. So I've cut some little blocks that are 16mm thick. That'll work out as my spacer. Spacer there, we'll do one over there, pull it up, that's good. And maybe just to give us a bit of continuity and make it look quite equal, I'm just going to do another hole further back. So this original block now we've used for 3 or 4 different places. So we've got some corner covers I want to put on here. When we put the featherboard on, it overlaps. I've worked out it's about a 20mm height. So if we just put it on here, it's going to look a bit ugly in the corners. So what can we do? Maybe do a corner cover. So that can be fixed on. That will cover where the featherboard, and it will give us a nice straight edge for the featherboard to go up to. So we need to cut those out. Now you could possibly rebate them if you have a spindle moulder. I'm going to do them table saw, which we're going to look at. You could possibly do them router. You can even buy that kind of moulding if you really want, okay? So there is the scenario that you have got the aspect, people do sell that as a right angle, right? So we're going to cut it out. By cutting it out, I also get to keep the corner bit, which I can use in the centre for somewhere else, okay? So I'm trying to save material. So with these, I've cut them to length, so I know where they're going. This is the back one. I've marked out which corner I want to cut out. Alright, that could be quite important to make sure you're cutting the right bits, so the right bit's going against the fence. I've set 20mm off of the fence, so when we cut them, the face edge here and here will be on there, the cutout bit will be nearest me. Right, so that's important to know which way you're going round on the table saw. So obviously with table saw, we're going to use this, we've got to have overhead crown guard in place, alright, that's quite important in the UK. So ours has got extra arm that I can bring up. So we can move this up and down, crown guard will clear, that's great. Riving knife needs to be in place again as well. got our groove cut out, so we're going to fix these on here. So screw them on, locate them. We'll cut them so they're the same level where you come down to the rail that's set up off the ground, so they're level with this. Right, so let's bring you up to date on where we are a little bit. We've added a few minor little things. Alright, so front rail is half width at the batten, cut in half, applied on the front here. Also added 2 rails in here. Now, why have I waited till now? If you really want to know, what I can get out the off-cut pile. So the bits I've cut, trimmed up, I try and take the bigger bits. So these are quite short, so it was nice to wait until now and not have to trim them off a whole length. So all I've done is screw those in on there. This one I fitted onto the front rail, so I fitted that in place, clamped it in, just screwed it in, just really to keep this width apart and keep it stable. Okay. Other thing I've obviously done, fitted the top doors. We're going to explain how we fit a door. They're all the same. There's 4. Right, I've got 2 top, 2 front. So we're going to look at that in a second. We've obviously done all our batten down the side for your tray. So an important part now, we're going to fit the front door. If we just go down to here, I'm going to hinge up the middle section. That's quite a square block at the moment, very robust. This is a singular leg, and actually it will move. So therefore, if we put the hinges on there, it's not going to hold it stable. Other thing I want to know is, at the moment, where is this parallel down through? There or there? Oh. So I've cut a piece of plywood. Done the same the other end. I've measured them off the back because that's actually pretty strong as a unit now. And then all I'm going to do is put it in here. I can even fix it in place whilst this is being moved about. Once we get out on site and it goes into location, that can be undone, taken off, and we know it'll hold it stable. All right, so that's all about trying to keep this parallel, stop it moving. Next thing we're going to do, fit the door. Time to fit the door. So at the moment we've got that bottom rail which just adds something and keeps it parallel. We know the hinges are going onto here. On my door I've measured down 100mm. That's not set in stone, that's just really where top of the hinge is going to go either end, so it's setting it in just a little bit. Okay, so I've just put a pencil line on there just to make it easier. Next thing we've got to do, get the door actually in reality into position. Also want a gap off the top so it's not going to jar and catch. So I've used a bit of plywood, 6mm. And all we're going to do with this, in reality, put it in place, bit of ply between it, and jack it up. Hold it with a clamp. So get it in place. I want to come to me just a little bit, so we're coming over to the framework. That's better. Down here. So we know we got that in place. That means when it shuts, we know we're going to get a gap across the top, so we know it'll close. I'm actually going to come up to the leaf of the hinge, not to that knuckle pin on the top, with them being fire door type hinges. To have that extra bit, I want to draw a line there, one there. No, one there. Going to repeat exactly the same down the bottom. So we've got the gap for our hinge. So door we're going to take out the way. I've set up cutting gauge or marking gauge to less than half the width of the hinge, so I can see the centre point at the middle of the knuckle. That's giving me a guide of where I can sink this into. So if we slide our hinge up, I'm just looking at my pencil line, hopefully not blocking the camera too much. I can go with knife just on here to create line there. Just want to extend that line forward a bit more now. So we've marked out the top. I'm going to do exactly the same on the bottom. We've marked out the hinge. So we've got it in there. I've clamped on a piece of plywood. Doesn't have to be plywood, just something as a straight edge. That'll give me a bearing surface to pair across. So I've set it back about the depth I want to go down to put that hinge in. So in here we've got our back line and our length. some of those fibres on the end so I can bring the chisel down and drop it into that knife line. Hopefully there it is. So we've got our recess for the hinge to fit in, but we're using a fire door type hinge. It has a bigger sort of knuckle on here, going to cause me more problems. So I've got to recess that in just a little bit. So we've used a piece of plywood as a bearing surface to come across. I've just had a quick look at kind of positioning the hinge and laying that in. So I'm trying to get back to that knuckle. The knife edge of the wheel, level with there. So that looks quite good. Now I'm going to do another scribe, working off that bit of ply. Quite firm coming down. I've got to do a little bit top and bottom as well because the hinge overhangs. Got to move my plywood edge back just a tiny bit. So hinge, we now fit in. We've allowed that extra room now for that knuckle to sit in. It sits squarely instead of being propped out. We want to centre drill the hinge hole, get it nice and accurate. So we can use centre drill that's got spring loaded tip. That locates in. Get it set square through your hole. These are going to probably come on and off. I've got to put the featherboard on the doors and stuff yet, so I don't want to put too many holes in or make it too deep. So if we go small screw to start with as a temporary fix, then we can swap it when we're fully done to something that will hold it a bit better and know that we haven't damaged the hole too much. Having got the hinges in the frame, we're now going to put them into the door as well. So we propped up by the width of the batten. So let's drop that in. I've opened the hinges out at this stage. I also had a piece of plywood in the top which gave us an offset down, so I can use that just to help pin it in. I can fold the hinges round. So we've just come down the front there. Then pencil. I can draw a line on there nicely. I know this is on the front face. Next thing I'm doing, just doing a little arrow so it helps indicate which line I maybe got there in case we've got a couple. Do the same on the bottom. Got it held in the bias. I've got my bit of plywood which helps get a bit of grip in between. I've come up high enough that we can see our lines that we've marked on. I'm going to use a saddle square so we can fit on here and extend that line over. I'll come down to there, you guys can see. So I'm lining up with where we've marked that hinge. From there we can actually lay our hinge in position. We can also go our marking gauge. Some of the end fibres so I can line up, turn the chisel around so the flat's now facing me, so the bevel edge facing into where the hinge is. I could double check here with a square, that's good. With our hinge, I know I only want to go in the thickness of the metal, so if I lay it on here, we've got our brake lines on the back. We can also now use, if you like, that scribe line we put down here, so I can drag the chisel and it will drop in. I want to try and again keep the flat edge to the back of the hinge mark. The chisel flat on our board now, the pairing board, the bit of ply or whatever you're using. Should give us our recess cut. We've still got to recess the knuckle back in, so we can do that in a sec. Got the doors hung, one screw per side just on the hinge at the moment, so I can't put too much weight on it, can't go pulling it about. But they will open and close. Next thing we've got to look at, we're going to start featherboarding. What's our featherboard? This is a tapered cut board. The narrower bit needs to go at the top, wide bit at the bottom. We're going to overlap them. So bring it round. So they're going to be like that. I cut these so that I've measured in between the two. This corner cupboard we put on, I've fixed totally. The far end, I've temporarily fixed at this point, so when I screw it up, it'll pinch these on just a little bit more as well. To make my life easier, I've made up simple featherboard layover jig. Just at MDF. I've even got a couple of locations of where I want to have the nail holes, so they're all in the same place, same line, looks nice and neat. A bit like my screws where we've laid out with that jig. So the idea of this is the bottom button here goes up against, the next board comes down, and you can see where it is here. That gives me the right offset to repeat it all the way up through. So fix that board, I'd move it up, do the next one, exactly the same way. On the first board, I could even bring this down, I'll go to the bench, I could drill the two holes here first. You said drill them? Why do you want to drill them? We're going to nail this on, but if we don't drill it on the end, especially this seems a bit dry, there's a risk it'll split. And that'd be a shame that it's going to split out before you've even got the job done. So, second board, we've got the first one pinned, fixed underneath. Our jig board I'm just going to use really in the middle, so let's bring our board in up to there for a sec, drop it down so the lip here sits right underneath. That's on the bottom board, bring that down. Help me, simple clamp in the centre, this we can slide up, come over with the drill, find the hole. Again, drilling through both those boards. Middle one, we've got to have a screw in there as well. Bit pushed on getting my line in, so we can hook it over a bit. My centre line is there, so I need to come up just a tiny bit. As I move it up, I can project the line down in a sec. When they're nearly done, I've got that tiny little triangle to do. Temptations to rush and do it now. The chances are when we get to the end of the job, we have some short little bits that will make up that. I could even possibly, if I wanted, use that. But don't go cut it off a big board at the moment. Wait until you get to the end. We can easily get that little bit out of the offcuts, okay? So that's quite easy to patch in. We're using hammer and nail. You could use nail gun. If you have access to one, that's possible. We're trying to keep it quite simple again. So hammer and nails, put them in. That looks quite nice. Things flow nicely. They look quite equal. This side in a minute we can screw up and that will pinch it up again. So it'll close that gap nicely. The only reason I left it loose makes it easier to get them in. And I've got a bearing surface down this edge to get them square. So one end done. Just a few more bits to do now. I'm going to keep going with the featherboard. I'll get you back in. We'll start looking at the next bits once I've done all that. So, featherboard at the doors. Now we've got to look at the roof. We've got the two plywood bits we're going to do on here and a centre bit. Why ply? Going to make it a bit more robust, it will last longer, and then we can do a roofing felt on top of that. So the next stage is really to cut the plywood. So really going to use the path system just to cut the ply. You could do this anyhow you kind of like. So I've set it up on the bench. Two path stops, one on the side, keep it square. This will give me a way of cross cutting it. Set up, got our board ready to go. Cut them all to size. I now want to round over the edges, so we're just going to use a round over cutter. And on the bench, I put some anti-slip pads so it doesn't go anywhere. So then we'll be able to run around with the router, cut those corners off radius the edge, make it easier for the felt. We cut our ply, we've softened the edges, so now we're looking at the felting. So we've got a mineral felt we're going to do for the roof. So I've laid my board on, I've looked at this a little bit, got a bit of damage in here, so we can cut around that at the moment. This is the middle one. So at the moment I've got the offset I want here, which gives me the overlap on either end, and the same here. So in reality, if I draw down there with my white pencil, and down there, we've now got the bit we want. So now we've got to do, cut it out. So I'm going to do something maybe just a little bit sneaky. You wouldn't do this with a shed, but this is a bit different. They're smaller. I don't want it moving around. We've got to try and bend the corners a little bit. So let's do a little bit of double-sided tape. So we put the tape on. That'll stop it slipping about while we're working. Well, that's my plan. Let's put a little bit of tape each corner, just a strip to help us. So that'll just stop it moving about a little bit while we're on the bench. So the idea, that'll just make it just a little bit more flexible. So now a corner. How difficult can it be? Uh-oh. Let's just drop this one in place. So that'll get fixed in either side, central. That one's done. Then we've got the same to do with the doors that are on here. So I've got to do exactly the same with these. And then I've got a little cover bit on the top. And then we've got to look at the overhang bit for the flap and where these lift up and down. So exactly the same process to do that felt. We have everything felted. Middle one's temporary fixed with a clamp. So from there, I've got a little spacer button. About 5-6mm wide. I can put that in between. I've then positioned the door or the cover. So I've got my plywood on there. That gives me a little bit of a gap so when we open it, it's not going to pinch. So from there we can fix it. So all I'm going to do is drill up through the pine batten that we've got for the frame and screw the plywood on. So hence the fact I've got the clamps on. So that will help resist that force that I'm pushing against. I can just simply screw those on. Ensure you check the length of the screws. There's nothing worse now than coming through. All right, we don't want holes in the top. Soon we fixed there, so what we fixed this back bit. That goes on, we've got a little bit of a felt overlap, and then we do a rubber strip on the top, we're going to pin it on. Alright, so getting to that stage, we're starting to finish things off and tidy it up a little bit. So we've got a bit of rubber we're going to fix down, so we know the lid opens and closes, it's got a bend, we know it will affect the felt. So we're going to pin that down either side, okay, so we can do that in a minute. Exactly the same fixings we use with the felts. Next thing's got things like handles, little turnbuckle, so we've got to fit those. Handle, bit tricky with the featherboard because you've got the tapered boards and it runs the risk that it'll distort the handle, possibly snap them. So we're looking at going horizontal. Right, so we can put them up in here. Our turnbuckle, I've allocated the aspect that the thickness of the board works as the stop nicely, so we've got to fix that down there. That's easy enough. If we open the door, we know we need to fix it on this batten, so I can set up a pencil gauge to give me a height down that we want to base. Then we can draw a bit of a line on here. I can look down through the middle of the holes and kind of say, oh, we want to be there, there. To start with, going with a normal scrape. Pin that one in place. So there you go, the ultimate bin store. We got our bins done, everything in there, nice and compact, looks better. What more could you want? Looks better than just having these sat on the drive. Thank you for watching, hope you've enjoyed this. Give us the thumbs up, hit that subscribe button. We'll see you again soon for more woodworking wisdom.